Ад імя Інстытута грамадзянскай прасторы і публічнай палітыкі шчыра вітаю вас ужо ў 6-й раз на універсітэце Лазарскага на канферэнцыі, прысвечанай беларускай тэматыцы. У гэтым годзе мы проста не маглі не адгукнуцца на падзеі, якія адбываліся і адбываюцца ва ўкраіне. Таму мы вырашылі паразважаць пра Беларусь на авансцэне Еўразіі паміж Масквою і Кіевам. Мы хацелі прааналізаваць грамадзянскую супольнасць у Беларусі, якая з аднаго боку ўсё ж такі звязана з Масквою, асабліва пасля падпісання дамовы аб Еўразэс, а з іншага боку мае перад сабой прыклад Украіны, якая прадэманстравала не толькі моцную грамадзянскую супольнасць, але і выдатны прыклад барацьбы за сваю свабоду і за сваю будучыню. І менавіта з гэтых двух перспектыў мы хацелі прааналізаваць грамадзянскую супольнасць у Беларусі. Гэта ўсё будзе заўтра падчас тэматычных панеляў. Спачатку мы паглядзім, які непасрэдны ўплыў падзеі ва ўкраіне аказалі на беларускую рэчавіснасць. Пасля мы пашукаем гістарычныя карані гэтай нашай ментальнасці нацыі на раздрожжу і ў выніку прааналізуем сучасны стан грамадзянскай супольнасці і перспектывы. А вынікі канферэнцыі падвядзем ужо ў нядзелю на шырока адкрытай дыскусіі, да якіх усіх запрашаем. Ну, а сёння хотела бы запросить сюда отчинить нашу конференцию ректор университета Лазарского, профессор Кристина Адкрыцьцё.
Hello, as it was already said, my name is Krystyna Adkrycьцё. I'm a rector of Lazarskym University, and I have a very great pleasure to welcome you here on behalf of university authorities. As you heard, and as I heard, because the topic is not so familiar for me, you will be discussing for 2 days, right, about Belarus on the front of the Euro-Asia between Moscow and Kiev. Hopefully it is possible. I also realized that our opening speeches are scheduled for 1 hour, but fortunately we have 2 speakers to talk more during this evening. So I welcome Mr. Roger Potocki, Senior Director for Europe National Endowment for Democracy, to talk a little bit more about this conference, and I wish you a very fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I welcome you here in the name of the National Endowment for Democracy and our partners here in Poland. It's a great pleasure to be a part of this because in my other life, I started as a historian with Professor Kaminski, who was the heart and soul of this conference, the founder of it. And I evolved eventually into somebody who works on Belarus, but I spend a lot of the time applying that history. And part of that history is this event. This is the 5th year that we've been supporting the Lazarsky conference. It's been a nice history and a nice history of cooperation between the National Endowment for Democracy, Poland, Lazarsky University, and Belarus. Most of what the endowment does goes directly to Belarus, the grants, the projects we support, but something would be missing if there wasn't this cross-border element, if there wasn't this Polish-Belarus relationship, or Lithuanian-Belarusian relationship, or even this Washington-Belarusian relationship. So that part of this history is something that I treasure, and that history is in a sense why I'm here, but it's also an interesting history at my own organization, because it's been difficult to convince our board of directors over the years. It's been difficult to argue even in Washington that a history conference is important, that we should be looking at Belarusian history rather than what's going on today in Belarus. And I've had my challenges getting support every year for this project. But this year, it seems much more obvious. I mean, history has in a sense come back to us. When we see what happened in Kiev, when we see what happened in Crimea, when we see the justifications that President Putin uses, they're grounded in the history I studied at Georgetown with Professor Kaminski. Professor Kaminsky reminded us all the time when I sat in his classroom about how Peter and Catherine would justify intervening in countries to defend believers. And we see President Putin doing that same thing today, using these historical justifications. In fact, it sounds like he believes in the Third Rome ideology. It sounds like he endorses the idea that conquest through military means is a way to build Russian greatness rather than focusing on European values and human rights. And this is something that every Lazarsky conference has talked about, that dichotomy between the Eurasian, the Asian way of promoting development and the greatness of the state as opposed to the values that are both in the history and present that we look at in terms of at least a transatlantic view on how to develop a country's greatness, so to speak. And so I'm very proud to be here. I'm proud of the relationship we have with Lazarsky. And I look forward to talking about how that history relates to the present today. It seems to me we stand at historical crossroads, and even President Lukashenko has a choice to make, whether he wants to look at current history and remember back to that dialogue process in 2008, 2010, or whether he wants to look back to an earlier history that seems to be embodied in that Eurasian Economic Union treaty that he signed just last week. We stand here in Warsaw 25 years after the first elections that led to the triumph of solidarity, to European values, to democracy, and a European future. For Poland, we stand here in Warsaw on the day that General Jaruzelski is buried. And all of that, it seems to me, causes us to reflect back on what that means for Belarus. And I look forward to 3 days of doing that. Thank you very much. It's my great honor to introduce my mentor, the person who first sent me to Poland when I was an undergraduate. He said to me, go, learn your damn language, learn something about your family, try to become Polish instead of all this Russian missile counting and other things that I was doing my first years at Georgetown. And he made me go to Krakow, not to Warsaw, God forbid. He made me learn some Polish, which I still don't speak well. But most of all, he taught me to be a historian. He told me to look at Belarus differently, at Ukraine, at Lithuania, as part of the Commonwealth, as part of that Grand Duchy, as part of Europe. And so that's why I'm here today, and I'll turn the microphone over to him and he can tell you himself.
I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy that I do see Belarusian still appearing in those conferences. After all, from year to year, and we started in 2006, when I speak with those who do come, and we know that those who do come to the conference from Belarusia, that those people are not necessarily welcome back, or if they are welcome back, they may be paying in this or other way for coming here and for doing things and talking about the things which are not the one which Lukashenko wants to hear or not to wants people to talk about. Therefore, once I see Valery Bulhakov is not here, and I just already asked, is he not here because he has something else to do, or that he is already sitting in place which is not very pleasant. I am pleased to see Andrei Dinko, the same story, never know. Will he come back, or they will put him in? Yes, it is. I'm also very pleasant and pleased. No, I'm very happy that that conference takes place, because it means that there are people able to support this idea of Belarusian discussing with people from outside their own problems of politics, problems of society, problems of economy, that they can speak about the country which now doesn't bring too much attention to itself. Ukraine obviously dominates interest, dominates also input of money, and that probably should be this way. But still, it took courage, which doesn't surprise us. After all, Polotski's family came to any meanings and enormous wealth by being soldiers from generation to generation. So Roger Potocki has still this ability to fight and to spend money for that conference instead for buying something, what Obama allows to buy for Ukrainian army is a great achievement, and without his help, obviously, those conferences would not take place. Now, we are here now, and I think Kasia put that so nicely, that the time which is around us is so important indeed for us to talk. And many, of course, reflections comes to mind. One of the reflections I have is a little frightful for me, because I think that after all, Belarusians for hundreds of years were part of the Commonwealth of many nations, and obviously we're part of Europe, and obviously there is a tradition, and tradition usually lives even when we don't know that it is in us. But the echoes are coming, and I would be very afraid if Belarus, which did not react to Maidan in strong way, like Belarus reacted very strongly to such important events in Ukraine as Khmelnytsky uprising. Then Belarus did respond to the Orange Revolution. This time Belarus seems to be very quiet. And I remember Poland being very quiet in a moment when not being quiet would be very wise. I'm thinking about mid-19th century. I'm thinking about period of a war, Crimean War, where England and France and few other countries, Turkey, went to war with Russia. And it was long war, very difficult for Russia. And Poles did not fight for independence in time of 3 years of that war. And then, few years passes by, the Russians get much stronger, and then when they were stronger, ready to smash anybody who would make uprising, Poles made uprising. You could say, if you could think about the worst moment of challenging the power of Tsar, it was 1861. But it did happen. I mean, clever strategies, clever thinking and discussing, finding proper moment, all of that is not necessarily the most important. The jump of the heart, the fly of the imagination, the decision of a very small group of students in November last year to gather in Maidan started a process which now brought the greatest powers of of our earth to reflect on themselves or to see themselves in extremely unpleasant mirror. When you see the hypocrisy and lying of the Western democratic leaders, when you see Europe behaving, I will not use the proper words, to Putin, you feel ashamed to call anybody to be European. One wants to say, let's be European the way we want Europe to be. But that is not necessarily Europe of Cameron or Merkel. So when we are gathering here and when we are going to talk about the Belarus situation now, I see it indeed, on the one hand, like a question, how come so quiet in Minsk? And to which degree that quietness is because of surprise that the president of Belarus was so openly anti-Putin, that president of Belarus was on a side, basically, of Maidan, of a government created because of Maidan. Kind of a situation which could say, well, he's not afraid of having Maidan in his own country. He doesn't think that some Belarusians would like to make Maidan to get rid of him. What really was going on, what is going on in Belarus, what will be happening in Belarus, to what degree, we historians know one thing, that we do not have ever the end of the story. That we cannot say, if that will now, well, we are sometimes tempted to say, if now that will not be done, then it will never be done. And that is not what historians can agree with. The future and possibilities do come, but they do come mostly because of action of people. And therefore, I'm always most interested in time of conference to hear the voice of you who do think independently, who think between yourself very differently, have different visions, and it is interesting which of those visions will make young people's hearts fly up and see things better than we do, we who are trying to be rational and who like to try to be pragmatic, and we very often do not see things really well. Thank you.
Дякую професору за таку не стільки привітальне, як і натхняльне слово. І сьогодні ми ще чекали прибуття намісника Усходнього департаменту Міністерства заміжних справ у Польщі, господара Конрада Павліка, але, на жаль, літерально вчора отримали від його мейла, який, я думаю, зачитаю. Шановне господарство, посилаючись на запрошення, отримане на ім'я директора Усходнього департаменту господарину Еви Фідік, прийняти уділ у конференції «Білорусь на авансцені Євразії» поміж Москвою і Києвом, а так само уступную згоду виступить з привітальним словом намісника директора департаменту господара Конрада Павліка, з шкодуванням повідомляємо, що по причині інших обов'язків і заміжної командировки віце-директор Павлік не може прийняти уділ у цьому мероприємстві. У той жа час мы хацелі падкрэсліць, што высока цэнім цыкл беларускіх канферэнцый, якія праводзяцца Інстытутам грамадзянскай прасторы і публічнай палітыкі пры універсітэце Лазарскага, і выказаць гатоўнасць прыняць удзел у наступным годзе. Я хацела падзякаваць усім, хто змог прыехаць у гэтым годзе, асабліва нашым пачэсным гасцям, пану Роджеру Патоцкаму, без якога, напэўна, не адбылася канферэнцыя ў гэтым годзе, які ўжо 5 гадоў падтрымлівае наш праект. Безумоўна, прафесару Камінскаму, які фактычна падаў ідэю стварэння гэтай канферэнцыі, які стварыў наш інстытут і які фактычна з'яўляецца бацькам нашага беларускага праекту тут. Усім, хто змог прыехаць з Беларусі, хто даехаў тут да нас з Варшавы. Заўтра у нас вялікі працоўны дзень. Пачынаем у 8:30 тут у гэтай аўдыторыі. А сёння запрашаем усіх на урачыстую вячэру, якая адбудзецца тут, каля гэтай аўдыторыі. На працягу, думаю, 15 хвілін усё будзе гатова. Яшчэ раз дзякуем і да заўтра.